Hey guys, Tony Rowe here. Sort of in a rush, sorry. I started the game already. I'm recording a 45-45 game against ErinYu. What are you doing? I'm gonna go knight c6. He can try to go f4 here, actually, but I'm guessing he's gonna go knight g to f3. I did a little bit of prep on this guy, and he almost exclusively plays the King's Indian attack against the French. So I doubt he'll go f4. Maybe he will, though. Switch it to me. I hope everyone's having... Yeah. I hope everyone is having a great afternoon. I know I am. Oh, shit. I have the chess.com pieces on. Time out. Time out. Ugh. I gotta tell you, I mean, I don't really have any huge beef with chess.com. I prefer free stuff, and I believe in Lee Chess as a platform, and I love what they're doing. But I'll tell you what, I love the friggin' chess.com pieces. I don't care what you say. You can dog me all you want. Those things are sexy. Shout out to the graphic designer who designed those pieces. If you're watching, I'm sorry that I accidentally used them for a hot second on stream. I know that probably violates some kind of rights. Don't sue me. So I did take a look at this line. I have played the g6 line against the King's Indian attack almost exclusively, so I sort of figured he had done he would do some work on me ahead of the game, but here's hoping that he didn't. And I reviewed my notes. I added to them a little bit. Yeah, Queen e2. Queen e2 without c3. I don't think I looked at. I don't think I'm much worried about it either. I think it's correct to go b6 in this case. My analysis almost exclusively today focused on... I looked at Queen e2 for a hot second, but I mostly focused on c3, a5, which it sort of looks ridiculous, but I'll explain it after the game. E5, knight to g4, d4, c takes d4, c takes d4, f6, which is a line that I've played a couple times. Black scores incredibly well there, but, queen e2, what can you do? The problem with putting the queen on e2 in the King's Indian attack is that usually with this structure being sort of forced upon black, especially when the pawn makes it to the e5 square, black really has no choice but to go bishop a6 anyway, in which case a lot of times you're not super excited about having the queen on e2. And leading with the queen protecting on the e5 square can have some irritating consequences. It's hard to work up a threat against the e5 pawn when your queen is the first one. For instance, e5, knight to d7, then you have three protectors, but my three attackers are crappy pieces, and your second defender is a queen. So, this is a threat already. And actually, because your knight is on d2, you can't play bishop f4 and meet the threat. So I think e5 is pretty much out of the question. I think when I looked at this line very quickly, I only looked at knight to f1, and then I thought black should go e5. And if bishop g5, I just release all the tension and go d4. And if e takes d5, knight takes d5, knight to e3, which looks more natural to me, then black can keep all the pieces on with knight d to e7 in very typical Akiba Rubinstein fashion. So I think I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to pre-move knight takes d5. And this is by far one of my favorite structures in chess. This after e takes d5, knight takes d5. I love playing these positions as the person who has the e5 c5, or if I'm white, the e4 c4 structure. I get it quite a bit in my white repertoire in various ways. Sometimes the e-pawn is still left at home in like sort of half Maroxy positions. I still like it. But It's very common, of course. This is basically like a Fianchetto King's Indian reverse now. So, well, one thing I wish I don't. Obviously, this isn't possible because people would cheat. I think, but I wish I could like make variations and moves right now, but I can't for obvious reasons, and I don't hold that against anyone. So, but basically, this is the same as the King's Indian defense Fianchetto variation, just reversed. And I get the white version of this quite a bit with my repertoire. I've had extremely good results in it. If you haven't downloaded all of your games from Elite Chess, filtered out all of the variants and probably the bullet, just to be safe, and taken a look at your own games in an Explorer, I really think that you should. In an Explorer fashion. That means like in a tabular form where you can play through all of your games and see all of the moves that were played and like the scoring percentages and all that stuff. Not only does it give you a really good insight into what positions and tabias are most common at your level, which is something that's awesome to know, but it also will show you which positions that you score really well in and you probably don't need to work that much on, and which positions that you score poorly in, maybe illustrating that you don't know the theory and your understanding of the typical tactics in middle games and where your pieces should go and stuff is limited. And sometimes there are just lines in your repertoire that aren't really your style that maybe it would be better to phase out instead of something else. Like for the longest time, I was playing the King's Indian like religiously as black, and I downloaded all my games on Lichess, filtered out all the crap, tossed it into an Explorer, and I realized I just didn't like score that great. I scored really well in the Mar del Plata, and I think that's due to me having just like religiously studied it, and I memorized a ton of theory, and I scored okay, but in a lot of the other lines, it was just like very clear that I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And so I tried to kind of repair it and work on it, and it ended up just being something that I couldn't really fix. And so I kind of just ended up giving it up, and I've been switching around to other things. I play the Grunfeld and the Queen's Gambit Decline mostly these days, but I played mostly everything in chess. The modern Benoni, the Czech Benoni, various other things. Semi-Slav. Ugh. You will have to excuse me. This game is likely to be extremely... I mean, it's a 45-45 game, so probably at some point I'm either going to have to mute my mic or actually probably I should just stop the recording if I have to like walk the dog or something, because if I just leave you here in silence and you just have to sit here in silence, it's not totally clear when I come back, and that would be sort of lame. So I can just pause the recording, speed through time. Because given my 45 plus 45 track record, almost certainly when I have about 5 to 10 minutes left, Morty's going to get up and demand that we go outside because he has to whiz. And you know what? Honestly, in the 2 hour span that I play these games, usually I get up to whiz too. So I'm not going to judge him. But in any case, I'll mute the mic or pause the recording. I don't know why I'm talking about me whizzing on camera. I'm sorry. So this is we're approaching the limits of my preparation here, though we're getting a position that I think I understand pretty well. My understanding of the subtleties of bishop g5 d4 would be somewhat lacking, but I think in any case my position would be pretty good there. So at least when I checked it before the game, it looked good to me, and all right. Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to avoid this move, actually. And I think that there were like 1 or 2 games in my database, and maybe one went h4. Is that true? I'm not sure. I don't remember. maybe one went h4 and another one went queen to d2. The problem with queen to d2 does stop h6, but queen d2 also completely strands this knight on f1 for the time being. White would practically be forced to go h4, knight 1 to h2. Which wouldn't be super exciting, but... So this is a pretty... Let's see, what's like kind of the analogous... Yeah, this is still kind of like a Fianchetto King's Indian. It's really weird to look at positions in reverse like this. So this is like a Fianchetto King's Indian where black has gone knight b to d7. I'm closing my eyes. I am trying to figure out what this position sort of looks like. It's just a weird-ass Fianchetto King's Indian. I mean, it would be hard to explain these moves if black made these moves in a King's Indian. Like... going knight b to d7, e5, d5, and then going queen to e7, rook to e8, knight to f8, bishop to g4. All of these moves are pretty weird. Which makes me think that my position should be fairly good, but... when you look at things in reverse, it can get kind of confusing. Like, my first thought is to go queen to d6, or bishop to e6, or h6. Like, those would be my sort of automatic candidate moves. One thing that is kind of lurking in these positions is, like, let's say white goes h4 just as a move, and I go bishop to e6. Was this the position that I saw? Maybe this was even one of the games in the database, and... knight takes e5, knight takes e5, f4. Hold on, was this it? Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, f4. Yeah. And then knight e to d7, e5. The point being that it's white is hitting the rook on a8 and also attacking this pinned knight at the same time. But I think I saw rook c8, e takes f6, knight takes f6, and yeah, there's almost no question in my mind that black is better there. Material is even, but still I have this structure, and I'm probably going to either get my knight to d5 or he's going to have to give up the bishop pair. Either one would be fairly uncomfortable. And again, he's still got some stupid pieces in that position. I don't think the queen belongs on e2, and there's still the knight on f1. So, and on queen d2, like I'm trying to figure out how to break this pin in a logical way, because my default plan in these structures that kind of look like this, I do the same thing as white, is to go knight to e8, which in the Fianchetto King's Indian would be knight to e1 to d3. In this case, it's knight e8 to d6. You put the knight on d6. It's very well centralized. It supports the c4 break. Oh, you fancy schmancy. It supports the c4 break. Ugh. Supports a c4 break, gets ready for either f5 or at least to bolster my pawn on e5 with f6 in the case of, but yeah, that's moot now. Okay, I think I pretty much am forced to take this thing, or else I'm just getting blown out. And on f4, I'll have to kind of go into the tank here. This is a little bit less good than I think the version with h4, bishop e6 in, because my rook doesn't have the c8 square, and my knight going back to the d7 square blocks in the bishop and all that jazz. So I'll have to think about this, but let me make sure that... Okay, I mean, he's hitting my knight. What else do I play here? Yeah, I mean, this is forced. Didn't see this coming. I don't know why, since I looked at it a move later and the insertion of h4 bishop e6 must favor black. But okay, so he's got tricks. They're not just for kids; they're also for ErinYus. All right, and now f4. So I guess probably a bunch of ways to play. One way to play is just move the queen to some square and let him take here, and then I take back. Another way is to move the knight and force him to play e5 and take his piece back that way. Like knight c6, e5, I protect the knight, e takes f6, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, queen takes f6. I actually sort of like that position. There's also knight e to d7, e5, rook b8, let's say. E takes f6, knight takes f6. That might still be the best version for me. I think my knight is well placed on the f6 square, and I don't have to deal with, like, in the case of knight c6, e5, bishop b7, this is still kind of an irritation, whereas after rook b8, with my knight on f6, it's really not. And honestly, it's starting to feel a little bit like I want my bishop on either this square or this square, and not this square. Could be wrong. It's just kind of my gut. So, okay, so are there any other candidate moves? Like, I could go knight takes d3, but that seems kind of insane. Because after knight takes d3, c takes d3, I still have to deal with the threat of e5, and it's actually not that easy to deal with, turns out. So probably not that move. Bishop g4. Bishop g4, queen f2, I guess, is forced. Well, it's not even clear that it's forced. But maybe it is. Yeah. Feels fishy, but maybe it's worth thinking about. Okay, so queen c7, f takes e5, queen takes e5. Bishop f4 is my gut. Yeah, I don't really like that position that much for black, honestly. But one thing is maybe knight g4. So queen c7, f takes e5, knight g4, and that way I get to plant the knight on this square, which seems a lot more logical. Okay, I'm actually starting to like that more than anything else. But knight e to d7 seems like a good backup option. Okay, so queen c7, yeah, obviously not queen d6. Queen c7, f takes e5, knight g4. What does he do? I mean, bishop f4 doesn't really do much anymore. I can just take with a knight, and I'm very happy. I would guess you just play knight back to d2. I think he wants it to fight for the e5 square, come back to f3 rather. So queen c7, f takes e4, knight g4, knight d2. Is there anything better than... Honestly, even in that position, I can consider knight e3. And I'm threatening to just lop off this bishop, or... because the knight is on d2. Yeah, but then maybe knight f3. I can just take back on e5 either way. In that position as well. And I think probably I'm pretty happy with myself. Is there any reason why he'd go queen c7, f takes e5, knight g4, e6? I think bishop e6, e5, discovering an attack against the bishop. Knight d5 is... Oh, my knight is not on that square. Hold on. Queen c7 here, takes e5. Oh, I can just move the rook, I guess. Honestly, probably in that position, it's not even out of the question just to take on e5 and let him take on a8. I think that would possibly be even playable for black. Completely unnecessary, but possible. Queen c7. Queen c7 just looks good. Okay. I think it's the most positionally logical way to return the pawn, actually. Or return the piece, excuse me. He can play bishop takes, f takes. I looked at this briefly, but there's no way that after bishop takes e5, or even queen takes e5, that black isn't better. Bishop e5 looks more natural to me, but yeah. It's kind of weird, like with my pawn on d4, this e4 pawn almost feels isolated. It's not weak like an isolated pawn, but the square in front of it is weak like an isolated pawn. Like when he takes here, and then I go here, because my pawn is on d4 and he has no hope of pushing d4 himself, this square in front of this e4 pawn is just like permanently under my control. And bishop f6, I think I can just take on e5. Bishop takes g7. King takes g7. I don't think that's in white's favor to play that way. He probably wants to avoid minor piece trades that might leave him with my knight on e5 versus this really crappy bishop on g2. Is my guess. My mom got me for my birthday this sweet Tervis tumbler that has an octopus on it. I'm obsessed with it. It's huge. If you can hear me drinking and you can hear like ice squishing around, I'm drinking out of it. It's just like the coolest cup ever. Octopus or octopi. You know, I actually looked it up. Octopus is an acceptable plural for more than one octopus, which I think is kind of bullshit, to be honest. I think it's octopi. But anyway, they're my favorite animal, or they're very high on my list if they're not my absolute favorite animal. Pandas, sea otters, sloths, and octopi are my top 4. The 5th slot is up for debate. If you have any exciting options, put them in the comments. Like the poison dart tree frogs, I think are in a tentative number 5 slot. So you have to beat the poison dart tree frog. But anywho, I like this cup. And as a former thermal engineer, I appreciate its heat transfer. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's got the vacuum wall, minimizing the convective heat transfer from the interior liquid in the cup to the ambient oxygen outside. And this is why I haven't recorded 45 plus 45 games in the past. Because they really are mostly sitting around. You know, one thing I do need to work on that I could work on in the 45-45 league, though, is that I think I'm sure this is the case for most chess players, but and I've said this before, I don't think I'm a very quick calculator. But on the other hand, I'm also not someone who, after a certain amount of time spent looking at the position, usually I'm not one who's able to come up with new ideas. So I don't consider myself a particularly strong blitz player. Am I over 2200 right now? A 2190, son of a bee sting. I don't consider myself a particularly strong blitz player. I've been stronger when I was playing a lot more, maybe a year ago, but and as such, I do need a little bit more time to calculate, I feel like, and to make sure I'm not hanging stuff and making horrible mistakes. But then I feel like once I usually come up with my 2 or 3 candidates, I analyze them fully, I think about my move, I make sure I'm not blundering anything. Usually, I am not particularly great at um, going deeper or trying to find extra candidates based on like what I found so far, if that makes sense. Usually, and I've been noticing this because I've been working my way through Grandmaster Preparation Calculation by Jakob Ogard, or however you say his name. Americans would say Jacob Agard, which is 100% incorrect, even if what I said is also 100% incorrect. Um, and the section on candidate moves is just like crushing my will to live. I did pretty great on like the first 15, and then they start getting harder and harder, and it gets to the point where I literally cannot just. I mean, I can stare at them for a half an hour, and I'm not going to find the answer because I just simply cannot expand my candidate search and kind of check for alternatives. And I know that's something I need to work on. I also just need to work on minimizing like my errors and quicker time controls. I'm actually pretty good, surprisingly good at doing this in longer time controls. My sense of danger and just having more time allows me to kind of check things over more quickly. And usually these longer time control games, I'm a little bit more competitive. Whereas like Blitz, I could be playing on my phone, like while I'm on the subway in New York, or I could be playing like while I'm waiting for Vicky to like try on clothes or something. And I'm just like moving around the pieces. And if it's a blunder, it's a blunder. But in longer time control games, I'm kind of checking everything. So, I mean, there's an obvious difference there. But yeah, I typically I feel like I kind of peak at sort of these mid-level time controls where the appropriate amount of time for me to spend thinking about a move is also the amount of time that I usually should be taking in these sort of time controls. Like if you gave me 45 more minutes and it was 90 plus 90 or something ridiculous, or 90 plus 30 is actually a relatively common time control. I don't think I would play much better than I play at 45, but I do think that compared to like a 15 plus 3 game, or like especially something like a 3+2 game or a 5+3 game, I think I play dramatically better in these games. But most people probably do. But then there are some people who are just like very quick, and they tend to play fairly well in blitz games relative to their classical games. Like they're just very good at not making errors and playing like a reasonable move quickly, whereas I feel like I am less good at playing reasonable moves quickly, and I need a little bit more time. But if you give me that time, I play noticeably better. But maybe that's just my sort of impression. One thing that I've also been kind of struggling with on a philosophical level is I've always been a guy who has studied a ton of opening theory, and just because I think it's fun. It's like it's sort of the scientist in me and like the researcher in me, and I like having access to all that data, and I like how sort of definite it is. You can with databases and with opening books and forgot to close Facebook. Shout out to Paul Swaney. You my man, but I can't talk to you right now. Yeah, and what the hell was I saying? Oh yeah, I just really like how definitive it is. Like you can gather up 8 million games in a database and opening books and analyze it yourself and with friends and with Stockfish afterwards, and combining all of that, you can come up with a really good grasp of what perfect play is. Whereas, and as such, I felt like, and this is true of one of my earlier coaches too. He said the same thing. He said this for me, and he said the same thing for himself actually, that he's always been a much stronger like early middle game player when the positions sort of resemble thematic positions from a certain opening, and then if once it devolves into something that looks a little bit more random, then he typically plays a little bit worse, and I sort of feel the same way about me. Okay, but we have a move, so let's think. First option is just knight takes e5, of course. That's probably what I'm going to play. I don't necessarily feel compelled to look at anything else. I mean, like, one idea is just to go bishop e6, but it doesn't really make any sense. I'm going to have to play knight takes e5 anyway, and I might want to go bishop g4 or bishop b7 in the future. I'm kind of expecting knight e5, knight d2. I think that's the most logical move. It is an interesting question whether or not I want to go bishop takes e5 instead. Now that I think about it, maybe this makes a little bit more sense. Bishop e5, knight e5, or even queen e5, actually. My point being is that he has a lot of weak dark squares, and I would prefer to trade dark squared bishops if I could. And in this specific position, it seems like it might be hard to avoid for white, because after bishop takes e5, I'm threatening bishop f4. He could go queen d2, but then he's sort of like making it pretty awkward to get this knight back out to some reasonable square. The question is whether or not something bishop takes e5, queen d2, let's say bishop e6, h3, knight f6 is better than me just going knight takes e5 right away. Kind of thinking it is. And the reason I say that is because the knight on f6 actually isn't that bad. I can go to the h5 square, when he'll pretty much be compelled to take, and then g3 is going to be horrifically weak because he played h3 in that line. So maybe that's just... maybe bishop takes e5 actually makes more sense. Bishop takes e5, and then... actually, yeah, again, queen e5. My point is that knight d2 now, knight e3 would be at least moderately annoying. I mean, he goes knight f3, and he deals with the threat of knight takes c2, and I have to move my queen somewhere. God, I almost misclicked f6. Holy shit, Aqua. I just checked my Facebook message. It was my friend Paul saying, "Man, another 45 plus 45 season. You're crazy." You're not wrong. You're not wrong, dude. All right, I'm going to play bishop takes e5. And then it's sort of an open question whether or not bishop takes e5, knight takes e5 is better. I mean, sort of in a long-term positional sense, I guess I want my knight on the e5 square. But it is sort of tempting to at least think about this. If I were white, I would strongly consider queen d2. I think playing bishop takes e5, let's just say knight takes e5, knight d2 is at least a little bit gross. I guess bishop e5, knight d2, bishop g4, maybe queen f2. I don't know what black's plan is in these positions. Maybe rook a to e8, and then I try to go f5 and embarrass his queen on the f2 square. That makes some sense. But at the same time, his bishop is so crap that I feel like maybe at least a little bit stupid playing f5 and allowing him to play e takes f5 and open up the bishop. But you know, if it's a good move, it's a good move. You know, modern chess is very concrete, and these things, these sorts of like, I don't want to play f5 and open up this bishop. If it works, it works. So that's kind of, this is kind of my thoughts at the moment. But I'm pretty happy with my position onto the opening, and I'm excited to show you guys some of the lines that I looked at in this line specifically. After c3. I think this line is just really cool. I want to make a video on it. I want to do an entire opening repertoire on my channel somehow, but it's just like a lot of work, and I haven't gotten around to. Every time I think, okay, I could make this manageable, I think, okay, maybe I could do this opening instead, and it would make more sense. Like, I could do the French, and I could do Like against knight c3 and knight d2, I can save space by going into the Rubinstein. But there are like 3 people on the planet who would be interested in watching me like talk about the Rubinstein for. I mean, I would probably legitimately need like, I would guess. Let's see, my dragon video was like 3 hours. I would guess that I would need like 2 of those videos to cover the Rubinstein and like the depth that I would want to. And so that's 6 hours of Rubinstein theory. And it's like, I mean, if there's a surefire way to get people to unsubscribe or die, like that's pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good way to go. So, yeah. So, and then I thought, yeah, maybe I could do the accelerated dragon, which I still think is kind of a good idea. The problem is there's one line in the accelerated dragon that really pisses me off, and I haven't found a solution to it yet. And I don't really want to throw something up on my channel like where it's a repertoire for black and the best that I could find is like white is slightly better in this one line. Because nowadays, like, I mean, it's pretty overwhelmingly clear. There's just massive amounts of empirical evidence that chess is a draw and that black equalizes like if he plays well out of the opening. And so, you know, and if you disagree with me there and you're like a crazy person and you think white should win with perfect play, consider the ever increasing draw rate as the blunder rate decreases. And what by that I mean, as rating goes higher and higher and players make less and less mistakes, of course there's a higher proportion of draws. And if you look at like world championship of correspondence chess, where it's like, you know, good insightful chess players that also have access to high-powered computers and huge databases and books and table bases, and they analyze for weeks, like the drawing rate is like 80% or 90% or something. So it's like the odds are pretty stacked against you there. Not to mention the fact that stalemate is not a win for white, and there are various piece combination like where you can be up like, you know, a friggin' bishop or something and not win. So I mean, it just doesn't make a lot of sense that white should win, but at least to me. I think knight f6 is basically forced, right? There's no real reason to go. I'm terrified I'm going to misclick and put this thing on the wrong square, play something really stupid. There's no particular reason to go knight e3, is there? Knight e3, knight takes e3, bishop takes f4, g takes f4. I sort of have to go here. Queen e3, no, that line totally sucks. And bishop takes f4 makes literally no sense. Then g takes f4, I have to go knight to f6, and then probably something like queen f3 or whatever, and I've given him the pawn on f4 instead of having it on g3, which is incredibly stupid. So, okay, let's do this. This does have the benefit of forcing my knight away from this circuit where it's easy for me to get it to e5. Like bishop takes e5, maybe knight takes e5 is just a pretty clear concession from white. So maybe this line is an improvement for white on that. The problem is that he's had to play h3 and g3, and that's pretty loosey-goosey. So, like in the event of bishop e5, queen e5, he can't even go knight d2 because queen takes g3, so he'd have to go something like king h2, and I don't know, knight h5 is possible, forcing him to make another concession, protecting like maybe queen f2 before he can go knight d2, but maybe I don't even want to do that. Maybe the insertion of knight h5 and queen f2 helps white. Maybe it doesn't though, because again, like the plan of going bishop e6 and f5, or bishop b7 and f5, or bishop, like putting my rook on e8 first. It's helpful to have his queen on the f2 square instead of anywhere else. Yeah, but in all these positions, yeah, my queen will also be on e5, which it wasn't the case when he was going bishop e5 and I was taking with the knight. So actually, this is probably a noticeably better version for white than the lines that I was looking at. Nice English, idiot. Yeah, and as far as I can tell, I guess I have to at least look at knight d2. Takes a bunch on f4, then rook f1. Yeah, I mean, I guess... I guess... Worst case scenario there. Let's see, queen g5, knight f3, queen g3 maybe, so bishop, knight d2, bishop takes, g takes, queen takes, rook f1, queen g5. Yeah, I mean that's actually fine. Shout out to Teenon123. Simultaneously observing my game and playing another game like a boss. Looks like a Grand Prix attack. Wow, I didn't even think about this idea, but how sweet would it be to, while I'm playing this game, just offer commentary on other games? Pretty sweet, actually. Knight c6. Do it. Knight c6 to d4 actually looks really uncomfortable. One of the problems with playing the Grand Prix attack where you play like e takes d5, or maybe... Yeah, in this case, it's hard for me to tell exactly what happened, but it looks like black played d5 at some point, and... Man, white's a savage. Confusing the issue somewhat. I mean, just outright hanging a pawn, but you know, maybe it's not that bad if he... Leech is making it hard for me to do commentary on Teenon's game. Okay, knight d2, so he's doing it. It looked bad to me. Certainly worse than bishop e5, queen e5. So what's the deal here? Bishop takes f4, g takes f4, queen takes f4. Oh, I'm just immediately losing after e5, huh? So takes, takes, takes. Wait, takes, takes, takes e5. Hitting the knight and the rook at the same time. Knight d5 is not possible. Queen e3 check. Queen takes e3, d takes e3. Yeah, even just knight c4 there is just completely murdering me because I didn't really change anything. So the line I'm looking at is bishop takes f4, g takes f4, queen takes f4, e5. So this is his idea. That's a good idea, and I did not at all see that. That makes this whole thing sort of annoying, doesn't it? Because now he gets to play rook f1, and I'm not really taking over the e5 square. And okay, so if I can't take on f4, this is sort of out of the question. So maybe something like takes, takes, and then bishop e6 is, or bishop b7 is playable, but it feels like a concession to me to release the tension between these two bishops and give him the f4 pawn instead of the g3 pawn. It feels more correct for me to play something like bishop e6 or bishop e7 in this position. But there's also knight h5, which was the first move I thought of when I realized e5 was probably just killing me in this variation. So knight h5, point being, of course, that I'm just threatening to take. And now on e5, there's no knight here. And I'm also threatening to take on g3. I sort of have the choice of various captures now without getting killed by e5. So knight h5, I mean, this just looks good. If he has to go something like bishop e5, queen e5, g4, knight f4, he's just dead. I think there's literally no way that position does not totally suck for white. Worst bishop in history, best knight in history. So that's like sort of out of the question almost. But on knight h5, what else do you do? it's I guess you can go bishop h6, and yeah, but even in that position, I could maybe just go bishop g3. So I'm cold. I need my Lee chess hoodie, which is in my car right now. Okay. Knight h5, bishop h6. I mean, yeah. I mean, worst case scenario, I just go rook e8, and his position is meh, not super exciting in my opinion. But I guess on bishop h6, I can even take on g3 check to the queen. I just don't see what he does. Knight h5 and how does he avoid losing material? I mean, his options to avoid losing material look really bad. Like bishop like knight h5, bishop e5, queen e5, knight f1, knight takes g3, knight takes g3, queen takes g3, e5, rook b8, and I don't see any knockout blow there. e6, bishop e6, it doesn't really do anything. I'm terrible with the arrows. So knight h5 just kind of looks good. I'm not sure what he intends there. Maybe I'm missing something dynamic, or maybe he just felt like he didn't have anything else. Maybe he just missed knight h5. Pretty natural move, though. I'm still trying to envision the reverse version of this. So this would be like a pawn chain that goes from a2 to d5, c7 to e5. And pawns on h6 and g6. With white having pieces on a bishop on e4 and a queen on c2. Yeah, I mean, it's weird for me to have the black version. I feel like when I envision it blindfold as white in my head, it looks more favorable to me for some reason. I don't know if that's me being a psychopath or what. Maybe. I mean, what else is there? I don't really see anything. I don't want to spend too much time here. I'm just going to play it. And I'm going to pre-move queen e5 because there's nothing else. I really want to find some way to sack the exchange after bishop h6, just because I'm a turd. I mean, knight g3 looks just very convincing. Like, I doubt there can ever be anything wrong with this move, and then I just go rook e8 on the next move, and I have this monster knight on g3, and I'm up a pawn. And, like, you know, bishop h6, knight g3, queen f2, rook e8, rook f1. Well, okay, knight takes f1, but even if I couldn't do that, just bishop e6 holds down everything anyway, so... I mean, I'm looking at stuff like bishop h6, bishop g3, bishop takes, and then just like king takes back or something. It's like 100% unnecessary, but it just feels to me like even in this case, like having a pawn for the exchange and being completely dominant on the dark squares with his like horrifically crap king. I should just be winning somehow anyway. Like bishop h6, bishop g3. Bishop takes f8, king takes f8, rook to f1, bishop h2 check forces king f2, because king h1, knight g3 check, king takes h2, well, knight e2 just wins the queen there, but there's also knight takes f1 double check for the chuckles. So, I mean, even this looks good. It's hard for me to come up with anything here. It makes me... Us reaching this position makes me think that he already kind of screwed up. I was sort of under the impression when I looked at this that queen e2 b6 was just an improved version of, let's say, like c3 b6. for black because the queen on e2 is much worse than just having the pawn on c3. Um, and then I do recall thinking that bishop g5 was d4 was a little generous, and that maybe white should at least try to go into a structure like this. I don't know, and maybe even knight e5 is just honestly because f4 queen c7 fe5 is really forced, and then I think after knight g4 black is already clearly better. So maybe knight e5 is really okay. This is forced. Maybe knight f5 is or knight e5, excuse me, is sort of just an inaccuracy because it's hard to avoid positions where black just completely has the e5 square under control and g3, h3 are weak. Your bishop on g2 is crap. I mean, there's just very large long-term problems for white, I think. Yeah, I mean, so like one thing here that I at least have to be moderately careful about is something like queen f2, queen g3, queen takes g3, knight takes g3, and then e5, where I'm up a pawn now, but it's sort of like a transformation of the position where I have the material and white has, I think, some of the positional factors in his favor. Like the pawn on e5 is good now. The knight coming to e4 or c4 is good. His light squared bishop is like now totally unleashed. So yeah, this just feels like something you should never do. It's just, but you know, okay, knight g3 feels wrong. I'm just gonna, if there's nothing tactically wrong with this, I'm just gonna slam the dog into the f4 square. There's gonna be a lot of suffering in this game. I'm not certain there's a knockout blow here, but this is not gonna be fun. I mean, worst case scenario, I just go g5, b5, I think, and I just try and sit on him. Like my first thought was that when I played knight f4, which is so sick. I'm just like kind of a sick human being when it comes to chess. I like to just completely run my opponent on a counterplay and just sit on dominant positions for a long time. It's the reason why I chose my coach as my coach, like Georg, because he does the exact same thing. And it's almost like, well, I mean, it is like a little bit sadistic, but like my first thought is, okay, the only way white is ever going to get counterplay in this position is to go knight c4. So my first thought after knight f4 was, how do I get b5 in without allowing a4, b4, knight c4 or something like that. So like I might make some stupidly mysterious move like rook b8 here at some point, intending to go b5 and meeting a4 with a6 because now takes and there's no pin. But I guess I could just go, like if he goes queen f2, I could also just go bishop e6. Point being knight c4, I'm just going to take this thing and then probably play g5, and it's worst bishop in history versus best knight in the world. And I'll find some way to win that. Probably h5 is the way to win that. I just play king g7, h5, take, and then I put a rook on h4. I put my other rook on h8. And his position will collapse eventually. I mean, he basically can't allow me to trade these two pieces. That would be insane. Okay, so something like this, bishop e6, he does have knight to f3, and then e5, which would obviously complicate the game quite a bit. But I'm not sure I can really stop that. This is the type of position where if I had it over the board, I would want to resign as white. But you can't because you're not down any material. Another thing that my first coach told me, that I'm actually finding ways to fill up the time here. I'm sorry if you guys find my incessant rambling irritating, but I don't have that much to say about this game thus far. But my first coach, who is a pretty well-known player in the Cleveland area, he's a national master. His name's Mike Jolson. Shout out to Mike if you're watching this. It's funny because he, like, nowadays he has like a style that's completely polar opposite to mine. Like, he's always looking to create and be sort of an artist at the chessboard. And nowadays I mostly try and sterilize the game and make my opponent hate his life until he quits. But The one thing he said about me that does it, I think it is true and it does resonate with me a little bit, and it's something that I need to work on, is that I think because I tend to be a pretty strong early middle game player and very strong in the openings, I very rarely get bad positions. And so when I get bad positions, I don't defend all that well. Like, I'm not a particularly tenacious defender. And I do think that hurts me a little bit. My friend Paul actually is like kind of the polar opposite. Like, same coach, same first coach, Mike Jolson, but he's never really studied the openings that much, and so he's just he's used to getting bad positions. And I know that sounds terrible of me to say, but he would totally agree with me, and he would say, yeah, like, I do get bad positions, and he like knows just how to fight like a dog now, and just not. I mean, get out of the suffering and kind of weasel his way out, and it's kind of like the Karyakin effect. Like, Karyakin, you can get him into a bad position, and he'll just find a way out every time, no matter what. Okay, so my first thought is bishop e6, and then what do I do after rook f1? g5. So there is a tactical problem here. I'm trying to see if it's actually an issue or not. So bishop e6, rook f1, g5. All's good. Knight to f3. Queen g7. I guess I can go queen. Oh, no, I can't go queen e7. That would be impressive through a bishop. So bishop e6, knight f3. No, bishop e6, rook f1, excuse me. g5. I'm never taking this thing. Cold day in hell. So bishop e6, rook f1, g5, knight to f3, queen to g7. Knight g5 is my current issue. Queen takes g5, queen takes f4 is the idea. Basically removing the defender. Queen takes g5, queen takes f4, queen takes f4, rook takes f4. Yeah, and there's nothing particularly exciting there. Is there bishop e6, rook f1, g5, knight f3, queen g7, knight takes g5, knight takes g2? No, because knight e6. Wow, so the bishop on e6 is actually the issue. If I play... So one idea is to play g5 right away, and I didn't want to do that at first because of knight f3. I thought queen e7, e5. But maybe I just have to accept that. Oh, e5 doesn't even, yeah, e5 doesn't even threaten this thing because his knight is on f3 anymore. His knight is on f3. So in that case, actually, I probably just have bishop e7 and his position still sucks big time. So maybe g5, knight f3, queen g7, e5, bishop b7 just makes like literal no sense. Okay, so g5, then rook f1, I can just... I have to meet the threat of knight to f3. Basically, I'm just switching around the move order. So g5, rook f1. Like, let's just say I go f6. f6 makes a little bit more sense to me than h6 because I think eventually down the line I'm going to want to play h5. So g5, rook f1, f6. Knight to f3. Queen to e7 is forced now, or at least between these two squares. It's my only option because I just blocked my queen from going here. So. And now e5, again, I think probably just bishop b7, and his position is sort of suck. Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out g5, rook f1, f6, knight to f3, queen to e7, e5, bishop e7, e takes f6, rook takes f6. Yeah, I guess no knight takes g5 because, at least because of... Well, there are a whole host of problems there, I think. Knight g2, knight h3 check is also pretty good. Yeah, okay. I like the guy who just wants to strangle his opponent wants me to find a way to stop knight f3 and e5, and I just can't do it. But allowing e5 doesn't really seem like it's anything big. I think just g5 is the most logical move here for me. And if he goes knight c4 or knight to f3, I have to decide between e7, c7, or g7. If he goes to c4, I'm almost certainly not going to g7, but probably c7 is the best square in that case. I'm nervous. This is one of my reasons I'm always in time trouble, is that I second guess myself and I check lines 2 and 3 times. One idea I at least have to think about white doing is a4, a5. I'm sure it's slow and very dumb, but yeah, okay, I shouldn't even consider it really. I guess on a4 I can even just go a5 and yeah, knight c4, then queen c7. I probably shouldn't do that actually. On a4 I should actually wait for him to go a5 just so I can go b5. So that plan's actually really stupid for white because I want to go b5 anyway. So, but maybe he goes a4 to stop me from going b5 for the time being. If he goes a4, I'll probably go bishop e6. Again, the moment he goes rook f1, he's threatening to go knight f3 to. I think. Maybe because my bishop isn't on e6 now, like something like rook f1. Let's say I go rook b8 to just get ready to go b5 and also to get my rook off this long diagonal. So let's say I go rook f1. He goes rook f1, rook b8 here. Knight f3, queen g7, knight takes g5, knight g2 is possible. And then queen g2, queen g5, I'm up a piece. He can instead go knight back to f3, but then I put my knight on e3 or back to f4, and I'm up a piece there as well. So I think in this specific position without the bishop on e6, when he has this desperado knight takes e6, maybe I don't have to like bolster the g5 pawn with f6, though I think it's a logical move to play f6 anyway. Maybe on rook f1, bishop b7 is like a more accurate move. I don't know. Maybe he should go knight to c4, let's say queen to c7, a4, making it difficult for me to organize b5. Put his knight on a good square. I think at some point white, I mean, from a practical perspective, white is just suffering a lot because of this dark squared bind and his horrible bishop. At some point, he's going to have to find a way to just like consequences be damned, break out and try and change the character of the position a little bit, because it's just the way the game is going now. Like if he doesn't find any active counterplay, I will just like find ways to slowly improve my position. F6, bishop b7, rook a to e8 maybe, b5, or maybe I go b5, bishop e6, c4, and just continually take space, push my stuff up the board. Again, h5, with the idea of either g takes h5 and now h3 is super weak, or just taking and inflicting this weakness on g4 and also opening up the h file, would be extremely bad for him. I mean, even on next move, let's say he plays something really slow like a4, maybe actually h5 is the move. I didn't think about this until now. I thought about h5 a couple moves ago, but then I sort of forgot about it a little bit. But I think h5 maybe even here would be quite good. Yeah, okay. So queen e7 or queen g7. Queen e7 is actually maybe a little bit more natural to me now that I look at it. Two reasons. If I ever want to bolster this pawn with f6, then my queen on g7 looks incredibly dumb because it's like a pawn on g7 basically. And if I want to go h5, I think maybe I want to hold the g7 square for my king such that I can swing this rook over to h8. I don't see any huge downsides, to tactical downsides. Again, knight g5, just queen g5, and if rook f1, then I can go f6. And if he goes e5, bishop b7, e takes, rook takes. Okay, so I think I'm just gonna... Okay, is h4 an issue? No, g4 hangs. Pretty sure. Honestly, even h4, f6 makes a lot of sense. He can't really take here anyway and afford to open up the h file, and then he's just inflicted himself with a weak g4 pawn. So maybe queen e7, h4, f6 is the way. Crap, Morty woke up. But he just moved locations from the couch to his kennel to sleep. I purposely ran him around and got him really tired before the game so he wouldn't bother me, because I knew I wanted to try to record. Okay, and if he goes e5 in this position, again, I think just bishop b7 now. And I actually think e5, bishop b7 favors black quite a bit, because otherwise my bishop is sort of crappy until I can play h5. But if he goes e5, bishop b7, then my bishop is very good. So, oi, 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 oi. Okay, queen e7 it is. Stain Castle. Is Tinon still playing? Aw. Is anyone playing? Thanks, guys. Kind of ruining this for me, but whatever. I have a lot of time, actually. I'm really happy with the way I've managed my time this game. Feels like I've been making relatively concise decisions. Knowing the opening pretty deeply. I mean, it's not that common for... Not as a brag, it's just not that common for someone at my rating, I think, to be prepared in, like, the French King's Indian attack, some random sideline, you know, knight f1, e5, bishop g5, d4, like... So... Okay, so he goes rook f1. I see you. I've been prepared for this. I see you. Okay, and I'm just going to go f6 quickly. f6, e5, bishop e7, e takes f6, rook takes f6, knight g5. What is happening outside my window? I hope you guys can't hear this screeching. Someone's getting their car towed, and it sounds like they like have their e-brake on or something. Yes, the tow truck guy's stopping. Wait, he knows it now. It's like, you know how like the tow truck, the front wheels off the back of the truck drag on the ground. What? Oh, he had like some kind of chain or something stuck, and it was like grinding against a wheel or something. I don't know what the hell's happening back here. I'm not moving, though, and I'm just totally engrossed in it. Round 2. What's happening? Is he doing it? Okay, I'm losing interest. He's not moving anymore. All right. Okay, so f6, e5, bishop b7. E takes, rook takes is my critical line, and then knight g5. And I'm looking at knight h3, rook f2... Rook f2. I mean, it feels like that should be good for me. Knight g5. So I'm losing it here. f6, e5. Bishop b7. I mean, there are alternatives to bishop b7, actually, I should probably look at, but bishop b7 for now. E takes f6 for now. Rook f6, knight g5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. 5. I mean, it seems insane. It has to lose somehow, but probably just knight h3, I guess, is just good enough. I have to imagine the queen versus rook and knight there is with white's weak king is good enough. I'm having a hard time visualizing what that looks like though. Maybe it's not as good as I think. Okay, I'm just gonna go f6. I'm scared to get up because then Morty's gonna get up, and right now he's happily sleeping. I really have to pee though. I had a large amount of caffeine on my way home from work. I get off work at 3:05 typically, and I'm in my car by like 3:10, 3:15. I check my email, make sure I didn't miss anything, and then I bounce. Grab Mort, we bounce. And I pounded a massive amount of caffeine. I had a bottle of soda on the way home, and then with Chipotle I had some. I'm not going to lie. Real talk. So, I'm scared for the caffeine crash is what I'm trying to say, but also I need to tinkle. Okay, so bishop b7 is one obvious candidate, and then the other obvious candidate is just to go h5 immediately. It's pretty sick here because h5, g takes h5, bishop takes h3 almost looks like it wins immediately, like wins a piece because of the construction of like where white's stuff is. Like how does he... I'm threatening to just go bishop g2, and he can't take because it forks the king and the queen. It's just so sick. So, I mean, maybe actually this move is just instantly losing to this. Sort of humorous. h5, the logical way to go would be to take on... would be to push e5, I think. Now that... Oh dear, the Chipotle. It's sort of doing work on my digestive tract right now. h5, e5. Basically trying to undermine this g5 pawn and also just opening up the e file. Makes a lot of sense. H takes, e takes f6 is possible. Queen takes would be forced. But again, this looks horrific. I mean, h takes g4, bishop takes g4, and I've won a pawn, and I don't know if I have any massive threat off the top of my head. I guess knight h3, bishop h3, bishop h3 is a threat, just winning a clean exchange. It's kind of lame, but not insignificant. Yeah, I mean, h5 takes, and he can't guard the bishop as far as I can see. It doesn't seem like there's any really dominant counterpunch either. I mean, knight g5, I just take it. e5, I think I just take here, and when he takes here, I take here or something. And it all just seems very good. h5, e5 takes here as possible, takes, and what does he do? I mean, it's honestly almost a threat for me to take, but not quite. The king would be the third defender to the knight, so that doesn't totally work yet. Yeah, it all looks pretty garbage. Is bishop b7 better? Probably not. I think actually it just makes more sense for me to go h5, and White's problems really center around his king and this loose structure, and I think the knight f4 and the bishop on c8 actually coordinate a little better to make sense of that. So I'm just like, this is sort of a critical moment. Like if h5 works, like the rest of the game is not going to take 27 minutes, I don't think. But if it's a bungle by me for some odd and stupid reason, then I'm going to kill myself for moving this pawn in front of my king like this. So I'm just using a little bit more time than I normally would to check it. And I think h5, e5, f takes e5 is out of the question because of rook takes e5 and then rook takes g5 check. And it's all coming crashing down. So probably not that. So h5, e5. E5 almost seems like the only move. I mean, I guess he could go h5, knight h2. That's theoretically possible. Maybe that's the best move. I don't know. It would be very disgusting if it was. I don't see any crushing blow right off the bat, which is a little bit sad. Actually, h5... Yeah, knight h2 might actually be... Yeah, pretty clearly the best. That's gross. Maybe I just play king g7 in that case, and that seems so stupid though, doesn't it? God. h5, knight h2, there has to be better. Like it doesn't feel to me like that should ever be a line, but maybe I take here, and if he takes with a knight, I just lop this thing off, and I force him to deal with the bad bishop for the rest of the game. That actually feels pretty good, because h5, knight h2 takes, then he hasn't really improved his position at all. Anytime he goes back to the f3 square, then I get to take on g4, and his knight is very bad on the h2 square. But if I go h5, knight h2, takes, and he takes with a knight, then I lop this idiot off, take here, and then he's... Did I already look at that line? No, it's basically the same thing without this thing and without this thing, which has to favor me. I was thinking I can go queen e5 in that end position and stop him from going e5, and he just has to sit there with his suck bishop for the rest of the game, and I'm just going to double on the h file. And I think that has to be winning. Positionally, it just seems completely overwhelming. Okay, so I'm going to chuck this out. I'm also going to pause the broadcast right here. I really need to pee. I will be right back. I am back. Thank you for your patience. I guess that took 0 seconds for you guys, so no thanks for your patience. Okay, so queen g3. That actually makes some sense. Now there's not this nonsense with the fork on h3, and maybe he can go rook f2 at some point to protect this idiot. I don't know. He's maybe threatening to take here now. Maybe his idea is even to run to the f2 square in anticipation of me going king g7 and rook h8. This move is actually pretty sweet. I'm mildly impressed by it. Okie dokie. I'm getting all these perverse ideas now. Okay, h4 actually. I was going to say maybe I should go king... Okay, so my first thought is to go... Here's my train of thought before I start rambling. My first thought is just to fix this pawn on g4 as a weakness and go king g7. And ask him what his next move is. Probably e5, but bishop b7 I think should be fine for me. And I'm just ready to go rook h8 at some point if I want and develop my last rook somehow. And then my thought was maybe I should just go here without going here. So on king f2, it makes less sense to go king f2 because rook h1 doesn't make any sense yet. Then I thought maybe king g7, king f2. h4 was really funny. That's why I chuckled, because he would have to go queen to h2. But then I realized that king f2, king g7, h4, knight h4 works. So that's kind of sad. Okay, so this isn't really a huge deal yet because I can just it's this move doesn't win immediately for black anymore, but I think I can just go knight. Like if I wanted to play king h7, g takes h5, knight takes h5 still has to be pretty good for me. I do wonder if I should just take here though, and open up the h file. I mean that's sort of my ultimate goal anyway. So I do think I'm just gonna flick this in, and then I have to sort of decide on what my next move is. Yeah. Excuse me. Okay, so where do my pieces go? I need to find a way to make progress on the king side. Feels to me like the only way to do that is to start attacking this thing and start bringing my pieces to the h file. The nice thing about playing pawn to f6 is that anytime he goes e5 takes and I take with the queen, with the f file open and my rook as a sort of x-ray defender, this knight takes g5, queen takes g5 never works because I always have the rook on f8. So I'm sort of debating between a move like king g7, a move like bishop e6, and bishop b7. These are sort of my main candidates. I don't see any real benefit now to... I mean, b4 just seems completely idiotic. Like, literally all the action is over here, and I don't think c4 is really much of a plan anymore, so... King g7 is the most flexible, I think. Like, I'm going to be happy with my king on g7 no matter what. It's also the move that, like, if it's bad, if it, like, turns out after the game that this move is not very good, I'm going to be very upset that I didn't play, like, one of the more obvious bishop moves. But I like king g7 because it's not totally clear to me which square is the one that I want to go to yet. Like, it's also possible to go bishop e6, e5, rook a to e8. That looks pretty harmonious. Then in the event of e takes f6, queen takes f6, like, everything is protected. I'm just good. Another thing that I like about this line is that maybe if he goes b3, a4, a5, a4. I guess bishop e6, b3, a5. He's going to go a4. But even then, it's kind of cute. I can go rook a7. And maybe this guy goes long distance all the way over to the h file. That would be sick. It also makes just logical sense to go to this square to go queen d7, doesn't it? Is there a way to just completely and conclusively stop e5? If I could do that, then I would be sort of free to just build up my position for the entirety of the game. It doesn't feel like there is, which is sort of a bummer. There's also bishop e6, e5, bishop d5. E takes f6, queen takes f6. All this looks good, but none of it is like a knockout blow. Like, I don't see how I can't be winning or close to winning with my knight on f4, but I also cannot find a win. And now I'm starting to fall behind on time, predictably. And this happens to me in a lot of games. Like, I very easily procure very good positions, and then I spend a lot of time, and it gets more complicated than it should. At some point, you have to transform your positional advantages into usually material advantages, and I am not super great at that. I openly admit that. Okay, so another idea is just queen e6 or queen d7, brute force taking on g4. You can go knight h2, I suppose. And also maybe something like queen e6, e5, queen takes, bishop takes, e takes f6 is not super clear. Because rook f6, knight g5, and so forth. So that's probably not a good idea. Cute, though. Funny. Um, okay, bishop b7, e5, rook a to e8 is actually maybe not as exciting as I thought. E takes, queen takes, rook e8, rook e8, knight g5. Knight g5, knight to, oh shoot, but no, that doesn't work. That would lose my queen. Okay, so bishop b7, e5, rook a to e8, let's say, just as a move. E takes, queen takes, rook e8, rook e8, knight g5. Maybe bishop g2, rook f4, queen g5. Yeah, but king takes g2. Yeah, these lines are long and messy. I'm not at all certain that any of that was right. Okay, I'm just gonna play. I have no idea what the correct move is here. I'm just gonna play bishop e6. Seems like a natural square. Let's do that. I have honestly no idea. We'll see what he plays, but I would imagine that he's going to play e5, and then I have to think of a logical move. Again, rook e8 is sort of my gut. e5, rook a to e8, e takes f6, queen takes f6. Yeah, it's messier than I would like when I allow e5. I could also go e5, bishop d5 like I discussed before. e5, bishop d5, e takes f6. In that position there's knight e2, check. Wait, what the hell am I talking about? e5, bishop d5, e takes f6. Knight e2 check, king h2. Jeez. Knight takes g3, and I have knight takes f1 check at the end. So maybe that's possible. Excuse my yawning. That's extremely rude, isn't it? I'm tired. I wake up at 5:45, walk the dog, grab like a breakfast bar, drive to work till 3:15, something like that. Drive home, play with Morty, cook dinner, do like a half an hour of prep, shower if I have time, and then I'm in a 2-hour chess game or something like that. What time is it? 7:35. So what time did I start? 6. So it's been an hour and 40 minutes almost. Hard to play chess after a day of work is one of the reasons why I don't play OTB tournaments that much anymore. I was really active when I was a high school student because kids are stupid and they have infinite energy and all of that. And then college, I was a little bit less active. Well, I was noticeably less active, but I was studying a lot in college. And then as an adult, it's just like it's impossible for me to play OTB tournaments now. It's not impossible. I could do it, but like the only tournaments are on Tuesday nights. And now that I work 5:45 in the morning, I used to wake up at like 8 o'clock for work, and I could go to like the Tuesday rapid tournaments if I wanted that start at like. They start at like 8 and they end at like midnight. And if they end at midnight and I have to go home and like walk the dog, I have to drive home, get home at 12:30, walk the dog. Like I'm in bed at 1 and then I'm up at 5:45. It's just like I'm gonna die the next day. It's just like not at all worth it. Um, there are a few weekend tournaments here and there, but that's mostly it, sadly. So it's like OTB tournaments have sort of fallen by the wayside for me a little bit. I wish to a certain extent they hadn't, because I think I'm good enough to get the national master title if I wanted. Maybe I should just go out and do that before Vicky wants to have kids and my chess life is completely destroyed. I can say that because she doesn't watch my videos. Okay, I'm glad this guy's fallen behind on time again. If I can, I would like to very quickly make a move on e5 and send him further behind on the clock if I could. That would be nice. I would anticipate that he's going to go e5. It seems like the move, at least from just a raw practical perspective. And I was trying to decide between bishop d5 and rook a to e8. And he goes b3. Okay, so now, I mean, I could flick in a5. a4 would be like a moderate threat, because after a takes b3, rook e2, a2, this rook would be active off the long diagonal. I kind of sort of would enjoy that. He would kind of sort of be forced to go rook f2, and I think I'd be more happy with that than not having a5, a takes 4. And the question is whether or not a5, a4 inserted helps me at all. I was thinking I could go rook a7 there, which is like a little bit silly, but maybe I should do that. And again, the question would be what happens after e5. So if I go a5, he goes a4, I go rook a7, he goes e5. I guess he can also just go e5 immediately. I was trying to back up on the buttons. It doesn't make any sense. He can go a5, e5. So that's probably just... It feels pretty stupid for me to go a5, e5, rook a7. I think after a5, e5, I would want to go rook a to e8 anyway, which maybe means I should just go rook a to e8 to start with. But I really want to play rook a5, a4. It's just like in my being. It's in my very soul. And I think it's pretty much out of the question to go a5, e5, a4. I'm guessing e takes f6, queen takes f6, knight g5, queen takes g5, bishop a8 is just good. I can't play rook takes a8 because of f4 hanging. So on a5, e5, I think I would have to move the rook, probably to the e8 square. Okay, so maybe I should just go rook a to e8 and let the dream die. All right, let's just do this. I don't know. I don't know, guys. This position's messy. I really can't find a plan. I guess one plan is just to go b5 now. Maybe he should go a4 just as like a waiting move. God, and then yeah, I'm not totally certain what I should do in that case. My idea is to go b5 and then a5 when he doesn't really want to go a4 anymore. I guess I could take and then I'd like to claim that his pawn is weaker on a4 than mine is on a5, and that I'll be able to better use the b file. I think those things are true. And so b4 would be a prophylactic move against him setting up sort of the optimal defensive structure with a4 first, which makes me think maybe he should go a4 in this position. I guess I could just go a6 and continue this silly dance we're playing. The idea just to go b5, a takes b5, and then maybe rook back to e8's risky though. e5, rook a to a8 maybe. Rook a2, excuse me. E takes, knight takes. Um, that might actually work. That might actually work still. That would be kind of silly. Again, how do I? There's no real way for me to get rid of these things. Trade this for this. It's like I'm trying to sort of subconsciously use Jakob Ogard's 3 questions. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this, the 3 questions of positional chess. What's my worst place piece? Where are the pawn levers or pawn breaks? I don't know how he phrases it. And what's my opponent's idea? I think are the 3 questions. And it sort of forms the basis for positional play. Ooh, you sly dog, you. Man, I really want to make something spectacular like f5 work, but I think e5 just loses a piece and a pawn for nothing. Okay, so does c4 do anything? No. Okay. Man, king f2 seems risky. This guy is a crazy person. I mean, I get the idea. He wants to go rook h1. It makes a lot of sense, actually. Maybe I should just go king g7, rook h1, rook h8, and just be extremely lame. I want to go b5. But b5, I'm a little bit worried about him going rook h1. I guess in that position I can still go king g7, and then on queen h2 I can just go rook h to g8. Excuse me. My mouth is a little hoarse after talking this much. So I was thinking, okay, king g7 right away, rook h1, rook h8. That was a disaster. But I was also thinking b5 first, just making sure that he can't go a4 and that I have an easier time opening up lines on the queen side later. That would be the idea behind b5. But b5, rook h1, king g7, queen h2, rook h8 is right on time, and he doesn't have any checks. Maybe I should do that and force him to go rook h1 before I invest the time into going king g7. I sort of like that. Yeah, I'm going to do that. So, like, it would be stupid for him to play queen h2, but I think, like, my line would be rook h1, king g7, queen h2, rook h8. Queen has to go back to, well, okay, queen can go to g1, but queen will probably go back to g3, and then I would play a5, excuse me. Intending to go either b4 and then a4, that's an idea, or just a4 immediately. b4 then a4, of course, he could take it, but I'm sort of making the case that him taking it, I would just bring a rook back, take on a4, and then he'd have a weak pawn on a2. When I go b4 and he takes on a4, I could also think about just taking back on a2, but then he has a passed a pawn. You can put a rook on a1. Maybe, I don't know. This is just, you know, pipe dream stuff. ErinYu, you know, he's a good player. He's struggling on. I think he was just. I don't think he did a lot of preparation in the opening. He thought for a while, I think, about queen to e2. I'll have to check the timestamps on that. And I don't think he was sure about this position. And then he uncorked knight e5 pretty fast. I think he was just worse after this. But he's done a pretty good job of making it a game. Like, I think especially queen g3 was a good move. I didn't see it at all. And I think this king f2 idea makes some sense. It looks insane, but I think it makes some sense. These are the kinds of positions that I think I play pretty well, though. Like, I think for people to... I think if I was to prescribe a way to beat myself... like if I was on someone else's 45-45 team and they were playing me, I would tell people to find a way to get me out of like my opening preparation without doing anything incredibly stupid and just get a game. And then I would encourage people to make it into a game where precise calculation and analytical skill is more important than long-term planning and like positional play, I would say, because I think for most people around my rating, I am much better in the opening than them, and I am better in these positions where it's more about improving, and it's not like sort of like a, it's more like trench warfare and less like a hand-to-hand combat knife fight, if you want to use some kind of really cheeseball analogy. I'm pretty good at finding ways to improve my position relative to my opponents and create weaknesses, and etc. I'm not as good of a calculator, and it takes me a while to make sure that I'm not making tactical blunders. So, like, I don't think this sort of closed type of a position where I can improve for a long time at will, and his position is sort of crappy, is a very good way to play against me. But you never know. I mean, I could blunder very easily in much better positions. This season against, who was it against? Cyanfish. I had a game where I played, I was so happy with my play in the opening. Like, I found some really, really nice moves. Maybe I'll make a video out of that game if I get a chance, because I think it was an instructive game in a lot of ways. I think it was an Anglo-Slav. Yeah, it was an Anglo-Slav with knight f3, d5, knight f3, d5, g3, knight f6, bishop g2, g4, bishop g4, c4, c6, knight to e5. And he played the best move, which is bishop e6, and I did a little bit of preparation there, and he played a sideline that I didn't think he would play. But I found a couple of really precise moves in the opening that I was very proud of. Like this really subtle knight retreat from e5 to f3 where it looks like it makes no sense, and it's actually, I think, by far the strongest move. And then I played this knight c to e5 move, like maybe 5 moves later. And I was really happy with both of those moves. And I got a pretty overwhelming advantage right out of the opening. Right after I played that knight c to e5 move, he played like, it was very hard for him to find a move. He played like h6 or something, and then I played like a3, another like basically just small improving pass move to make him try and find a move in a difficult position, and he decided to give away material. And I reached a winning endgame, and I was improving, and just like I said, I missed some ways to transform the game, like the advantages, into like a concrete winning position. I just didn't cash in, and I gave him a little bit of too much time to regroup, and he played like perfect. He played just like the best moves. I mean, he worked up counterplay in the only way he could, and I got low on time, again, something that I do a lot, and I made a blunder, and I made a horrific blunder. It went from completely winning to like mate in 6 or something for him, and he found the mate in 6, and I lost a completely winning game. And this was last season. It's by far one of my worst 45 plus 45 games, but and it's like that's like the cruelest part of chess is like one blunder can completely ruin a beautiful game. Like, there's no coming back from it. Even if he didn't find the moves, it would still have mentally haunted me that I allowed a mate in 6 during my game. And yeah, that was a bad game. But that's a good example of the type of thing that I need to work on in chess. And actually, it's funny, my coach says the same thing about him. Like, he needs to work on. He's very, very well prepared in the openings. We have very similar repertoires, and he's very well prepared as well. He always gets good, solid positions, and he plays them pretty well. He's very good at like endgame grinds and playing simple positions extremely well, with a lot of nuance. But he's not very good at like transforming the advantages and winning one positions. And it's just something that, yeah, I mean, obviously he's on quite a bit of a higher level as far as doing that than I am. But yeah, so that's something that we both need to work on. Okay, so he finally goes e5. I think just this move is the most sensible. It looks very natural. Finally, I can put this thing on a good square. And okay, so this takes. That actually looks really good for me. Okay, so bishop d5, e takes f6, queen takes f6, rook takes, queen h2 is something that I have to look at, because then rook h8 is not possible. He would be threatening what? I don't know. Probably you would be threatening queen to h7. Which would maybe, would that mate? I would have, sorry, I'm just trying to visualize this. Bishop d5, e takes f6, queen takes f6, rook e8, queen h2. If it was his turn, queen h7 check. King f8 would be forced. Okay, he doesn't actually have any other checks there, though. So, because my rook is on e8, I have the f8 square, and queen h8 would just be met by queen takes h8, rook takes h8, and then king to f7, probably. Maybe king to e7, actually, so knight takes g5 is in check. This is a little bit scary. Rook e8, queen h2. I have rook e2 check, and king g1 is a blowout. He's forced to go. He can, yeah, and king g3, king g1, king g3 allow rook takes g2 with check. That's completely out of the question. He has to go. King f1 is forced. The problem with playing rook e2 check is then queen h8 is probably mating me. If I don't, and I don't have any other checks, I think, with the king on f1. So I would have to play some kind of like waiting move or prophylactic move. I'd have to play like some running with the king move. I don't know. This is a little redonkulous. Maybe I don't know. I can't visualize this far. Bishop d5, e takes f6, queen takes f6, rook e8, rook e8. Bishop d5, e8. This is another thing that I suck at. I replay the lines in my head 58 times. Queen h2, rook e2 check. King f1 is the line that I'm looking at. King f8 is the most logical move to me in that position. Then queen f8, just I take there, and I think he's probably losing. Yeah, rook takes h8 check, then king g8, and he can't stop. I think he can't stop. Rook takes. He has rook h2 maybe. But he's probably losing there anyway to rook takes g2, bishop takes f3. Or at least black must be much, much better. Yeah, and then I'm taking on g4, I think so. So after king f8, he wouldn't have any checks, I don't think. And should I go king f8? Is king f8 the best move? I don't know. But should I go king f8 before I go rook e2 check? Probably not, because then is there anything better? Can I just take on e5? He has to take with the rook, I think. Knight g2. Queen g2, or maybe even king g2. Yeah, I don't see anything there. I was looking at something like this, some way to exploit the open f file. I don't think that works. Bishop d5 is like the only move that makes sense to me, but I'm trying to be a little bit more rigorous about looking at more candidates. Queen d7. These moves just seem stupid compared to bishop d5. I don't know why I'm thinking about anything else. Okay, he can go queen h2 there too, without playing rook takes e8, I suppose. So bishop d5, e takes, and then there. Suppose in that case I have rook h8 though, don't I? So that's the point of taking on e8 in the first place. There is bishop d5, e takes f6. Sorry, I was like chewing on my pop filter. Bishop d5, e takes f6. Queen takes f6. Queen to h2, rook h8. Rook takes e8. Rook takes h2. Rook takes h2. I feel like that should never work. But, I mean, there's just bishop g4, for instance. But it would be at least a little bit hairy, because he'd have something like, I don't know, rook there to rook 2 to h8. Maybe has some checks. I guess maybe I could just go back to g8 in that case or something. Oy vey, Erin. Why are you doing this to me? So, bishop d5, e takes f6, queen takes f6, queen h2, rook h8, rook e8, rook h2, rook h2, knight g... Oh, knight g2 is just winning, isn't it? Knight g2... Yeah, f3 is hanging. I forgot that my bishop was on the d5 square. Okay, I mean that has to be stone cold winning. I mean, king takes, queen takes f3 check is a blowout, and something like rook h8 just queen f3 check is also I'll probably mate somehow. I don't know. Okay, I think being relatively certain that I can go king f8 at the end of this critical variation and not die, I'm fairly comfortable going for this. I'm going to pre-move queen takes. There isn't another move. He's forking my king and queen and also discovering an attack here, so there isn't much of a choice. Is queen e2 check a move? Probably not. No, okay. You got to check. That could be a brilliancy. Dude, Morty's still sleeping. He's upside down in his kennel, like grinning almost. When he falls asleep, he like... his top teeth show. He looks hilarious. Paws up in the air. He's like going full corpse. Sometimes he pouts when I go on my computer like this. I'm on my computer a lot because I just love playing chess and analyzing chess, and I talk on the Lee Chess Slack and bother other people and stop them from doing work. And he gets irritated sometimes because he just wants to play. So after this game, I'm going to take him out and play. I've been reading this book. I'm trying to learn stuff about the Queen's Gambit Decline because I feel like I've added it to my repertoire because I can go d4, e6. Like, I feel like, okay, now that I played the French, like, pretty competently, there's something to be said for, like, playing the Queen's Gambit to go along with it, and I can go d4, e6 instead of d4, d5 and all that. And, you know, it just kind of fits the same sort of bill, like, it's solid, light squared sort of base strategy. And Georg has been helping me there, but I feel like I've spent like my entire life as black putting the bishop on g7 against d4 openings, and so it's really hard for me to sort of adjust to not doing that, and I just need to like learn what I'm doing. And so I've been going through this chess structures book by Rios. I think his name is Rios. I forget the full name. It's really good. The book's really good, though. I highly recommend it to anyone. Usually, I mean, like, you're going to buy this book and not all of the structures are going to be something that you play, but, okay, I thought I pre-moved that, but whatever. But a lot of times, like, multiple chapters in the book will make sense depending on what your white and black repertoires are. Especially if you are a D4 player, I think a lot of it will apply to your white repertoire. Like there's stuff, the hanging pawns, the Isolani, the Carlsbad structure. If you're a D4 player, you're very likely to see all of those from one side or the other. The Taresh is an isolated queen's pawn, but there are a lot of lines, let's say in the Nimzo Indian, where white accepts an isolated D pawn, or depending on how you play, you might play like the Panov against what am I saying? Anywho, it's very likely that you're going to see an isolated D pawn structure if you're a D4 player from either side, and the Carlsbad structure if you play the Queen's Gambit is sort of hard to avoid in some way or another. And what else is there? The hanging pawns. It's likely that you're going to be on one side of the hanging pawns. The KID structure, of course, the Grunfeld structures, etc. But of course, I think there's chapters on the Sicilian. I haven't really gotten that far yet. I've been going through the Carlsbad stuff, and I want to go through the Isolani chapter. But yeah, it's pretty good. So good. This is the one thing that I find a little bit cruel about the 45-45 league. It's like you're lulled into kind of thinking you're playing a game 90, and then you make it to move 30, and the game is still really rich and complicated, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a 5-minute game now. I mean, of course you get plus 45, and that makes it a lot different. Like, it's incredibly hard to flag in these games, and even if you're down to your last 5 seconds and you make a move, you have almost a minute, when your opponent moves back, to make sure that you're at least not like blundering mate in one or something. But like I've noticed for sure that the quality of my play depreciates in these last, like in the final phases of these 45-45 game leagues, 45-45 league games. I'm not saying that the time control should change or anything, but there's no real solution. I think 45-45 is actually really comfortable time control for these leagues. The games last about 2 hours. We're going a little over in this game because we're sort of taking all of the time, but I think 2.5 hours a week is not unreasonable. Okay, so how to not lose. Rookie 2 check and then king f8 is my first thought. Rookie 2 check, king f1, king f8, and what does he do? It's sort of crumbling now, his position, if he doesn't have anything. I mean, it's sort of all falling apart. Okay, so rookie 2, king f1. Rookie 2, king f1, king f8 was my idea. And if he tries to just jump off into an endgame somehow and not die, queen takes f8, rook takes f8. Oh, he's just... it's check. Yeah, that's right. King g7, let's say. And then he's sort of forced to go rook h2 to not lose the bishop. And I'm doing what? Toro says what? Again, one line I analyzed before was just rook g2, king... bishop takes f3, excuse me. And I have this bishop and this knight and this pawn, really, versus... he could go rook g1, couldn't he? So I wouldn't win the pawn. But Okay, so rook e2. So he probably can't trade queens, which is nice. Yeah, because knight g2, king takes e2, and I don't think I have any tricks. Is there knight takes d3 check here in any capacity? No. And rook e3 would allow queen h8, king f7, rook h7, which looks to be very bad. So I either play this check or I play like king f8 immediately or king f7 immediately. Those feel stupid. Probably this check and king f8 is the only way to play, but knight g2 maybe is a candidate here. Knight takes g2, and then if he goes queen h7, king f8 box. How does he defend against knight? Ah, he can just play queen takes g2. But does he have anything forcing? He also can trade off the queen. So I'm looking at the line knight g2, queen h7, king f8 box, queen h8, takes, let's say king here, rook takes e8, king takes e8, king takes g2, and maybe he's not dead there. He gets to go king g3, and then I somehow manage to trade off my knight for this bishop, which is not particularly great. I mean, this move looks very logical and looks extremely hard to meet. And rook e2, king f1, king f8. Let's just say he goes rook g1. Again, there's just rook g2 though. Just at least that the simplest is just rook g2. Maybe there are fancier moves like putting my queen on the e file or something like that. But yeah, also that's probably even stronger. Just threatening queen e3. Okay, I just have to play this. I don't have enough time to think about anything else. This is quite a nice game, actually. I again, not like meant to be a humble brag, but I really love how dominant this knight is versus this bishop the whole game, and how poetic it might be if I just end up like winning this bishop because it's trapped or something. You have to appreciate the aesthetics in chess, and I especially like positions where I'm just totally dominant that my opponent can't move any pieces. It almost feels study-like middle game Zugzwang somehow. Yeah, so I think if he checks on h8, he's losing. What else is there? Rook g1, knight e1, rook e1, I think, is probably just pretty clean. Oh, knight e1, I just take here, check. Yeah. Knight e1, defending the bishop and simultaneously opening up another attacker on the bishop. You're the best at tactics, Tony. Okay, so takes there. King g7. I don't know. I don't want to lose. Okay, here. This feels pretty forced. I mean, there's nothing besides really rook h2, right? And I think just rook g2, bishop takes f3, rook g1 is sort of forced. Maybe rook g3 is better. I don't know. Doesn't much matter. So rook h2, rook g2, rook g2, bishop f3, rook g3. Oh crap, Morty's up. He's strolling in here, dude. He's sniffing the garbage can. He knows. He knows it's time. Well, that's a pretty good move, isn't it? Didn't see that move at all. Okay, so what do I play here? So rook g2, rook d5 is his idea. Yeah, that's interestingly good. Sort of irritating. It might not even work actually. So rook d8, rook d8, rook g2, rook takes d5, rook g3, king f2, rook f3 check. King takes f3, knight d5 would obviously be completely winning for me, but there's rook g2, rook to d5. Rook g3, rook takes g5 check. King h6. I have to go to h6 because king f6, rook f5 would be a disaster. King here, and then his only check is rook h5, and I take there. I guess he would take on g3 then. Son of a bee sting. Oh no, his king isn't there yet. Wait, hold. Okay, I'm mixing up. Oh my god. No! No! Oh! 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 I peed. Oh my god. Okay, alright. Recenter yourself. Rook g2, rook g5. Oh, thank you, Erin. You're a real stand-up guy because I've misclicked in worse circumstances, like the college chess league, and had title players just like absolutely and mercilessly just take my stuff and not not give me the take back. So for that, you're a total stud. Okay, so rook takes g2, rook here, rook g3. The problem is there's rook d7 check, and I don't necessarily see anything there. One idea is to just go bishop f3, rook c2, and I have to be winning. But I'm just wondering if there's anything better. I could also just go rook c2 immediately, which is probably even stronger since this bishop is in no way worth trading for this knight. Rook d5, and he can't go knight g5 because I take here check. So I think probably this move is just quite good. What a shit show. Oh my god. Sorry, I can't get over it. My heart was like racing, and you know, like I had that feeling like when you get pulled over by the cops, like you effed up, and your life is over, and there's nothing you can. You're in there, like your fate is in their hands, basically. Oh man. Okay. Oh my. Oh my. he's laying behind my chair now. He hasn't come up and bothered me yet. My insulin pump is also low on insulin, so if you hear like a boop, boop, boop every 15 minutes, literally every 15 minutes on the dot, that's what it is. And yes, every 15 minutes beeping is annoying as you'd think it would be for 12 hours on end until I, get home from work and my insulin runs out and I change my insulin pump. Shout out to South Korea. I'm jealous of his 2300 Blitz rating. I used to be 2300 Blitz. Okay, is there any reason why I wouldn't go King F6? Any tactical reason? I don't think so. No checks from the horsey. I presume he just wants to take on a7, so I can't take on a2. I guess he can't really take on a7 because the bishop is hanging. He's got some small problems to deal with in this position. That's for sure. Bishop h1, rook c1 check. King g2. Bishop takes f3 check is a pretty nice deflection. That's definitely resignable. Yeah, I never got to complete my shout out for T-Non. Good guy. Runs the 45-45 league in some capacity. I think he's a moderator of some kind. He also does the ledger, which is pretty sweet. What to play? If you guys didn't know this, you could enter your moves in algebraic notation or UCI if you're a sick son of a bitch. And enter focuses the chat, which is pretty sweet. I use this because sometimes I play like on my porch on my laptop, and I think it's faster for me to touch or type in here than to use the touchpad. Especially because if you're like pretty clever with this, you can type like, if you want to almost pre-move a move with this, you can type like BB, and then once they make their move, you type in like 7. Because with this thing, it's kind of an interesting implementation. It's not what I would think, but basically you press enter to give focus to this, and then if you type a move in here and it's a legal move, it automatically plays it, and you don't have to hit enter. So if I type in like let's say my opponent moves, he just goes rook takes a7. The moment I type in rook c1, it immediately makes that move. Like it somehow checks after like every character whether or not it's a move, and then it makes it if it's a move. So which it will kind of screw you on typos, so you have to watch out. Like if you mean to play rook to e5 and you play rook e4 instead because the 4 is right next to the 5 key, like you're just boned. There's no recourse. So you have to be really damn sure that you're good with typing, or that it's just still better to accept those typos than to lose on time with the touchpad every now and then. Recording this wasn't that bad. A lot of times when I get home from work, I'm just really tired and it's hard for me to focus on the games, but I feel like, again, recording helps me to stay focused and a little bit on task. I'm obviously bullshitting a lot more than I normally would, but that almost keeps me more on task than if I'm by myself and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go onto Spotify and try to find some new music to listen to, and I'm going to still type in the Lee Chess Slack, and I'm going to surf the chess pub forums for like the newest like opening nerd stuff and whatever. It's like and sometimes if there's just, it's like when I'm talking to you guys, it also like just kind of keeps me engaged, where if I'm just sitting here by myself, like I've fallen asleep before for like 5 minutes. Just like I put my head down with the like optimistic, oh, I'm going to think about this position blindfolded. And then I just like wake up 5 minutes later like, whoops. So that doesn't totally work. I'm getting married on Saturday, by the way, and I just dropped off my suit to the dry cleaner, and I'm petrified it's going to come back with like a hole in the crotch or something, and I'm just not going to have something to wear for the wedding. I'm a procrastinator, and I'm just really hoping it doesn't bite me in the ass for this one day, like just this one friggin' time. Don't screw me, Williamsburg cleaners. I took off tomorrow and Friday, so I have some time to sort of get ready. I don't have any groomsmen gifts yet. Don't tell my groomsmen. I have ideas, but I actually have to go and like buy the gifts. I'm just sort of a crap person. Oh man, I have a lot of stuff to do tomorrow. Gotta pick up my suit. Gotta go get groomsmen gifts. Okay, I said I had a lot of stuff, and now I only have 2 things. Oh, I need to go get Morty a bow tie. That's extremely important. Hey, Mort. Hey, buddy. He's looking at me, tail wagging. It's go time. There's probably like less than 10 minutes, bud, and then we can go outside. Well, I actually have to analyze this game a little bit, but then we can go outside. I'll show you guys the extent of my preparation in a hot second when this game ends. I don't know if ErinYu is going to let his time run out or he's going to make a move, but it's hard to find a move here. I mean, he could check again, and then I go king e7. Okay. And then it becomes hard to find a move again. This is basically the issue. So just king e7, I think. Rook d5 is nothing, as far as I can tell. King f7, knight g5 would be a pretty serious mistake. I'd be losing, maybe, in that case. King g7 is possible, but then he just goes rook back to d7. Check. So okay. Think for a second. You've got 5 minutes, dum-dum. King e7. I don't see anything. Rook d5, knight d5, knight e1. Knight to e3 check. Okay. Good enough. Very good, in fact. Just immediately winning, I think, actually, is the way to put it. I can even just take on... He moves the king, I play rook takes g2, check, rook takes... knight takes g2, knight takes g2, king takes g2, and then I win the ending probably after a5. I don't think c4, yes, he's not... He's in the square, so that doesn't totally work. Okay, but this, just take here, no? He fell for the same visualization mistake that I did. Unless he did that on purpose. He was just hoping I wouldn't see it. But yeah, same exact error that I made before. Let's go rook e2. And I'll pre-move this one. His knight's dominated. He sort of is forced to take. And then I'll take on a2. And I think this one's all she wrote. Oh, his rook is hanging too. That's pretty good, isn't it? What is this guy doing? Okay, I'll just go c4. I'm not even going to take it. It's mate. Look, mate 2. Good game. Very good game. Blaster hippie, you funny. This Tony Rowe is a scrub. Okay, Plaster Hippie, you're dead to me now. You were one comment from being my hero, but you said you didn't use, you said one too few numbers, and your Tony Rowe is a scrub comment didn't get wiped. Now you're dead to me. If I was a jerk, I would mute you right now, but I'm not going to. Okay, so let's copy this game, or I don't have to do that anymore. Let's go to this, and let's go to screw you, London system. That's real. Yeah, let's go here. And let's take a look at this. So, I wonder if I still have his games open. No, I don't, but I can maybe bring it up. Can you guys see this? Yeah. So I'll give you a quick tour of ChessBase. One easy thing you can do is download everyone's games, select all their games, go to stats, opening reference on selection, and I just picked all his white games. And you can see he's played e4 in 99.5% of his games. And after e6, he actually scores extremely well in the King's Indian attack. But I noticed he had never played against the line that I actually play. Yeah, after c5, g3, knight c6, bishop g2, he's never faced g6. He's never faced g6, it looks like, in any capacity. Okay, maybe one time. Scratch that. c5, bishop g2, bishop g7. I actually missed this game. This would have been extremely helpful. Okay, but black played queen c7 anyway, so. Yeah, so I opened up my file on this line and just did some work anyway. So let me drag that over so you can see it. And this is like some of the theory. So I was, oh, wow, this looks like death. Hold on. Nice job, XSplit. Wow, this is pathetic. Okay. It's because my screen capture isn't the full screen of Lead Chess. My bad. I'm an idiot. Okay, this is freaking good enough. One. Okay. Yeah, so this was my prep that sort of just built on my file. But you can see very quickly, I didn't do a huge amount of work on this move. I didn't think he would play queen e2. It seemed like to me, for a guy who almost exclusively played the King's Indian attack against a lot of different openings, that he would not play a move that was maybe not best. But you can see that I did look at this e5 idea and then bishop g4, d4. The only move I looked at was queen d2. But yeah, this was okay. So I was a little bit wrong in my memory. I thought in this game that I looked at, white had played h4. But he played queen to d2, bishop e6, knight e5. So this is a similar idea to what we got in the game. And this was kind of where my memory and preparation stopped. And Morty, chewing on paper. And where I was sort of on my own. So that just gives you some insight into my preparation. But the most principled move here, I think, is c3. And at least it used to be that the most popular move here was b6. The point being to just put your bishop on b7 or a6 and finish your development. But then people started to realize that a5 was quite good. And the idea is actually really cute. There are two ideas. The first one is that, okay, c3 obviously prepares this push, hoping for something like knight to d7, and then now c3 pushes d4 and takes the space and takes the center, etc. And the one wrinkle here is that in this specific position, black can actually go knight to g4, which is quite strong. And on d4, c takes d4, c takes d4, f6, exclam. And the point is that it might look like h3 forces knight to h6, and then this this knight is on a stupid square, etc. But knight takes f2 exclam is possible. And the first place that I saw this was in the book by Viti-Yugov called The French Defense Reloaded. And the point is that after king takes, f takes e5, d takes e5, queen b6 check, something like king f1, black has extremely good compensation for the piece. I think you can, okay, 4 games have reached this position, and black has played all of the moves that I think are reasonable candidate moves, taking on either way, developing your last piece, which, by the way, also prepares to sort of swing around to this square, and the move that I actually like, which is a4, which also reveals kind of a nice point, is that white's development, just in general, in this sort of structure, is a little bit, even if we go to d7, is a little bit awkward if knight b3 can be met by a4. because the knight would have to go back, and this bishop is stuck, this knight is poorly placed on this square, this queen does not defend the pawn, etc. And it starts to be a little bit uncomfortable for white to complete his development. The second point, so a4, and in this position after queen b6 check, and now a4, white doesn't have queen b3, budging your queen off this really strong diagonal. He just has to find a move, which is extremely difficult. Yeah, like my computer and my prep said that knight b1 was basically the only move, and black was still much better after you just take on e5, you can take on g3, etc. Extremely uncomfortable. But the other point is that queen b6 is possible, just period. If you go b6 and you try to do the same thing, you can't, because after e5, knight g4, d4, c takes, f6, e takes, queen takes, or whatever, or even h3 immediately, the queen can't come to b6 check anymore. And so you kind of lose that option. So a5 is kind of a cool finesse, I think, and it's been in my preparation for a while. I've been waiting. I might even have played a game on Lichess with this move. I wonder. Oh, a lot of games have been played on Lichess with this move. Okay, so it won't be that easy to find it if I have played it, because I don't end up in the top games or recent games. Okay, so let's just go back. So, but queen e2, b6, I think is pretty clearly the best move, and then knight f1 is almost the only move, and then I did see that other moves are logical too, like h6 is a move that I would consider. Basically, the point being now that on e5, bishop g5 isn't possible anymore, and so I can always keep this tension and sort of try and go like okay, h4, e5, and sooner or later I'm going to play d4 under favorable circumstances, or he's going to be forced to go into this structure that I enjoy playing, this bind structure. So this was also possible. I noticed this in my preparation. I wasn't sure which one to play, but I just decided that maybe e5, because he can't really make use of like the g5 square favorably. Like, I didn't think bishop g5 d4 was very good for white. I didn't think I maybe had the reason to go h6 and waste the move, even though it's probably very reasonable as well. I thought maybe just this was more precise. And I thought on this, I would go knight d to e7. And in fact, I have this exact game in my prep as well. And I think I ended my notes on that exact point. So bishop g5, d4, and then I didn't even think about this move here. I was thinking about like queen d2, which of course stops this, but it does make this thing kind of a pile of dog crap for a second, or just h4, bishop e6, and then I looked at this move, which doesn't really make any damn sense now that I think about it, and maybe just like something like this is probably still a little bit better for black, I would guess, because the d5 square and my extra space is, I think, kind of relevant. Let's make this blue. Okay. But he goes 95 right away, which is probably... actually it's interesting, though. Why can't I, now that I think about it, go... like queen? Oh, I can. Okay, so this just would be better than what I even had, probably, because, or maybe I go knight d7. That's probably more precise. Aha, and then I just go knight e5 exactly, sort of like the game, except with h4 and bishop e6 inserted, which has to be better for me. So actually queen c7, just like the game, is probably the best way to play. And maybe we'll make this unclear just so it's clear that this line is better. Okay, and I played bishop e5. Stockfish likes this move. Okay, now it likes bishop e5. Now it likes knight e5. Okay, so I guess they're of equal value. I think it's just sort of up for debate whether or not like a position like this is better than what I got in the game. I think I prefer what I got in the game, but black is maybe a smidge better here too. Yeah, and maybe this is where, I mean, it sort of feels like the opening went a little bit awry for black. I like this h3 move a lot, and then maybe he does have to acquiesce to just, oh, he can't do that yet. Maybe king h2 is what I meant. And then he tries to just do this and claim that maybe after something like bishop e6, that black is just slightly better, but white is solid and improving. You know, this is an idea. Let's ditch that. Because, so the idea is clever, right? It took me a second to find this because I'm bad. But I think this knight h5 move is just quite good, and after this and this, it just becomes just a real sufferfest for white. And it is important to note something like this: rook f1, g5 again is, there's this trick which would really screw up my chances here. I guess I do have this desperado, which I missed. What's the material count? 6 versus 6. Yeah, I mean, this is just a mess. I don't feel like black is at all better here anymore. So that would be pretty bad. But g5 is natural enough anyway. It is worth considering this. But I thought that maybe the queen was more poorly... Geez, I'm terrible with this. More kind of poorly placed on this square if I'm going to f6. Ha! Knight h4. I didn't see that, but that would be incredibly strong as well. Okay, so did he have knight h4 actually here? Okay, why is it not... Okay, so queen g7, knight h4, takes. Ah, and he obviously, okay, he can take back, whereas... Okay, I get it. Okay. I get it, guys. All right. h5 immediately, huh? Ah. Just going for it. And if here, knight g2, winning instantly. So why would I was just hallucinating the threat. Oh, I think I was just lazy. I was like, okay, f6 is good anyway. Like, all right, but yeah, it's true. I didn't. Yeah, h5. All right, touche, stockfish. All right. And this is just an accelerated version of what I got in the game, so that obviously makes a lot of sense. So that this move is f6 is dubious. It's just lazy. And again, it would be interesting for white to at least maybe play something like this and force some kind of a position like this where at least his bishop is not the worst piece of garbage in the world. Like, it's pretty clear that the knight is still better, but at least in this position, like, if you look at it, you don't go, oh, God, white, ugh. Like, it's just like, okay, white's probably a little bit better, or white's probably a little bit worse, but it's not like grim death. I feel like after h5, even now, I like queen g3. Stockfish is harshing on it pretty bad. There is this, and then I thought bishop b7. No, I thought takes. Excuse me. Other variations, I was going bishop b7, but not here. And I did look at takes. Oh, I didn't look at bishop b7. Bishop b7. Okay. I didn't see this. What is the... Why is this completely deadly? Knight g2. Okay, what would you say is happening here? Let's just say he waits with some stupid move. Knight takes g2, king takes g2, queen f4? No. Oh, I'm just tripling. That's stupid. He just can't move. He's completely lost in turn. He's just running out of moves. Okay. He must go just like a complete silent assassin move, rook f7. I didn't see any of this. Wow, that's gross. I mean, it's just losing instantly. Okay. I didn't see bishop b7 at all. You're a jerk, Stockfish. Bishop e6, b3. I did think about this, and then I was just unsure about what I should do here. Yeah, I felt like I had to go rook a to e8 anyway, I think, because rook a7 just looked dumb. But maybe, I mean, maybe here. I don't know. This was sort of what I thought. But it's complicated. Yeah, knight d2 makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Yeah, this is the kind of stuff, like, it's just... These positions I kind of just make sure I'm not losing, and I feel like I'm better, and I just play moves that made sense to me. I wasn't delving super deep into it. I liked b5 quite a bit. I don't know. I mean, maybe king g7 right away is possibly better. Possibly with b4. Okay. e5, bishop d5. I think these moves are sort of all obvious. Takes oh wow, so this is just e takes f6 is just instantly losing. This is all sort of forced. King. This is all what I played. King f8. Okay, here would be a good opportunity to see if there were other moves that were good, because I saw king f8 and I was like, okay, that's pretty much it. Wow, okay, king f8 is the only move that's still winning. Interesting. I wouldn't have expected that, but wow, that's crazy. I'm actually, this might be the move that I'm sort of most proud of, because I saw it pretty deep into the calculations, actually. Like I saw it when I was looking at bishop d5. I don't remember if I saw it earlier than that. I think I was deciding on bishop d5, and I saw this position that I needed a move, and I got to here, and I saw, okay, king f8, and I get to run, and queen h7 is nothing, queen h8 trades everything off, and so that was sort of it. And he doesn't really have a great way to stop the problems with his g2 bishop. This is just all losing. Yeah, I think I even thought about rook g2 doesn't work, but what else did I look at? I also looked at this and just thought I was winning here as well. But this is just less clear, I think. There's no real reason to get rid of my bishop for his knight. Okay, Morty's getting really irritated, so I'm going to start cutting this down to... There isn't much left anyway. Okay, yeah, this is... Okay, I also could have just taken his rook, right? Oh, and then he takes my rook. Yeah, okay. I get it. I get why I did that. Yeah, and then this is just actually mate. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this pseudo live stream of my game, and you get to see my capabilities in a longer time control. I hope you found the game interesting. I hope maybe for you French players, you get a quick and dirty glance at a pretty interesting repertoire choice against the King's Indian attack, which is pretty neat. What else? You get a glimpse into sort of my half an hour preparation in chess base that I was able to do. Not substantial. Oh, that's not it. That's my Queen's Gambit video analysis that I'm working on. Don't look at that yet. That's top secret. I'm not finished with that. Okay. Spoiler alert, I'm going to be making another From the Lab video on the Queen's Gambit Exchange at some point. So if you made it through this, you get a free preview of my next video. Okay, thank you guys for watching. Honestly, if you toughed it out all the way through this video, you are either insane or a champ, and I love you. So, bye guys, I hope you'd enjoyed it.